Penny.
What?
For your thoughts. Penny for your thoughts.
Do you have one?
I'm sure the replicator will have one on file.
Evelyn, may I take off the uniform for a moment?
Captain.
Hello everyone, welcome back to Fully Functional, TNG Podcast. I'm Maggie, joined by Jeff and Dory.
Yo.
Jeff and I are veteran Trekkies, and Dory is a rookie Trekkie, and we are taking her on her first journey through Star Trek: The Next Generation. Today we're talking about the Season 5 episode, The Perfect Mate. Original air date is April 25th, 1992, and we'll take it to Dory for the recap.
Okay.
Okay.
In an effort to... I literally just wrote this from the episode. In an effort to bring an end to their centuries-long war, Krios and Volt Minor have agreed to a ceremony of reconciliation to be held aboard the Enterprise at a point midway between their two systems. Great. So we meet Ambassador Brian.
Fun fact about that: the Krios were mentioned in a previous episode as being kind of what do you call it, in a war with the Klingons.
Oh, they'd be fighting everybody
apparently.
then.
Or they just forgot they used that name before.
That's actually quite possible.
Yeah. Okay, so Ambassador Brian. Yeah.
Bram Stoker.
Yep, Mr. Bram Stoker. So he's in a fun hat, and he kind of look like his outfit is very Professor Dumbledore from Harry Potter. Okay, so he is meeting with Picard, and he's like, I got special cargo, which is worrisome to start. And it's fragile and quite irreplaceable. Again, red flag and terrifying.
Yeah.
And he's like, make sure no one goes in the area except for like vital personnel. And I was like, ugh.
Yeah, which means don't put a lock on the door, basically, as we'll find out later.
Yeah. So Riker lets Picard know that they have picked up a distress call from a Ferengi shuttle, and they're going to set a course to intercept. Ambassador Bram Stoker is like, timing is essential. Fuck the Ferengis, basically. So the Ferengi shuttle kind of looks like a sideways kettle. And
Yes.
So the Enterprise, they transport the two Ferengis from the shuttle, like literally as it's blowing up, in which I noted, where was O'Brien? We had somebody else at the panel.
Yeah, I feel like we haven't seen him in a while.
They didn't want to pay him to be in this episode.
Also, I think Ferengi is like moose, where Ferengi is just singular and plural.
Yes, it is.
Okay. So Riker asks Worf to take the Ferengi to their quarters, but like not close to his. I'm like, okay, Riker. I mean, all right.
The Ferengi suck, but that is a little like...
It's racist.
Kinda...
It's a little rude.
Yeah, that's a little fucked to say.
They keep doing this with the Ferengi, where they try to turn them into like a joke, but they also want people to take them seriously. And I'm like, guys, make up your mind.
Yeah. So Worf is like, unless you can arrange your own transfer, you're kind of stuck with us for a bit. And the Ferengi are like, oh, yeah, we love that for us. We're cool with that. Okay, so their outfits, though, are wild. They're wearing, like, holographic sleeves and, like, a holographic dickie that's, like, with this gray suit with a huge belt buckle on the chest. I don't know. It's a wild outfit. So they're being weird, and they're obviously up to something. So Geordi says, oh, okay, holodeck is ready. They've made Krios 1 an ancient temple of Akadar. That's where they're going to do the reconciliation ceremony. So the Vault Minor and Krios have been in a war for a very long time because it's a result of two brothers fighting over a woman Okay. So, Worf, but security sucks on the Enterprise because one of the Ferengi just like goes into the cargo bay. No
Yeah, they
problem.
specifically asked
After
him.
Bram Stoker. Yeah, like specifically
Yeah.
after Bram Stoker was like, hey, nobody's allowed in that area, please and thank you. And then the Ferengi's like, don't mind if I do.
Yeah.
And so then we see a big floating glowing egg. And that
As one does.
makes me nervous, but yep. So then so they're leaving the holodeck. So it's Bram, Stoker, Picard and Geordi, and they are just like overtaken basically by a Ferengi who introduces himself as Par Lenore, and he wants to talk to Bram, and Picard really fucking hates the Ferengi.
Fun fact: you've seen this Ferengi before.
Oh, okay.
Not the same Ferengi, but the actor played the Ferengi in the episode where they introduced Vash.
Yeah.
Oh, wild. Okay, party. So Par goes, we're pleased to hear, Ambassador, that you have at last negotiated peace with the Maltese. Peace is good for trade, unless you happen to be an arms merchant.
They didn't get to the peace is good for business rule of acquisition in this one because they haven't introduced the rules of acquisition yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Ferengi have a
so then
Bible called the Rules of Acquisition.
Of course.
Yeah, it's pretty funny.
So back in the cargo bay, the other dummy is pushing barrels towards the egg. But then Par is like, oh, we should do like transport between Krios and Vault Minor. And Picard's like, truly, fuck off until after the ceremony.
Yeah.
But Geordi's like, listen, bro, have you seen the dolphins?
Yeah.
What is happening? This is truly very random.
Is that okay? Sorry to interrupt, but so we may have told you this in when we first started the series, but like one of the ideas they originally had for the ship was that they would have huge areas filled with water to keep dolphins in order to help
Cetacean ops.
Yeah, in order to help with navigation of the ship.
Yes.
Because they, like,
What?
dolphins can navigate in 3D space.
What?
Yeah. So I think this may have been a reference to that.
Yep, just a very quiet one, but it's there.
Yeah.
I have no recollection of this.
We may not have told you.
Yeah.
This might be full out news to me on many levels. Dolphins can navigate?
Well, yeah,
Well,
they
like,
swim in the ocean.
No, I know that, but like they're helpful to navigating in space.
Yeah, why not?
And the Enterprise has. Okay, I need
Look,
to see
it doesn't
a
have
fucking
to make
floor
sense.
plan of the Enterprise.
Listen,
I need to know where these water
I don't even
bays are. Oh my god!
I don't even
dolphins.
I don't even know if they knew the details of it. They're just like, it's the 80s and people care about dolphins.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's something Gene Roddenberry probably came up with.
Yeah.
Because he's the kind of person that would say, yeah, obviously dolphins are helping navigate the ship. Oh, why's that? Because
Because they can because they can swim in the ocean.
Yep.
And
He just does like a dolphin imitation and walks away.
I mean, you could just have an octopus also. They also navigate 3D space in water.
yeah, but they're not as smart
Like-
as dolphins.
I guess, yeah.
Oh god.
Yeah, I guess octopus don't murder people like dolphins do. Well, dolphins don't murder people. They murder, like, other sea creatures. And I don't mean in the way that, like, oh, it's like circle of life
Premeditative?
nature. Yeah, no, dolphins are actually, like, they fucking, like, murder.
Oh my god.
They like, they kill things just for the sake of killing them, not because they're, like, eating or anything.
I don't know if I should mention this, but like, okay, well, I've already started. Whatever, I'll just say it. So like many, many, many years ago, I did what's it called?
Like a dolphin swim or whatever?
No. I did it's one of those Harry Potter tests. What's the thing? What they?
Oh, like what house are you, or like?
No.
What's your
It's
Hogwarts
the like, what's the your animal
Oh, yeah.
What the
Your Patronus.
Patronus? Yes.
Yeah.
And I did that on like the Pottermore website. Like this is like a decade ago or something. And they said my Patronus was a dolphin.
Well,
They're murderers. Oh God.
they're also really cool. They often rescue humans from sharks and shit. They're also the only other known species to have sex for pleasure rather than purely like for breeding and stuff.
Just imagine dolphin sex,
Good for them, I guess.
please.
No, thank you.
Yeah.
No,
Which also-
thank you.
Yeah.
Or respectfully decline.
They all cool, but they
Well-
are also capable of murder.
Oh God. Well, listen, I guess it's like you take one out, you bring them back into the world. They are the circle of life.
Yeah.
Oh boy. Okay. Well, Worf finds the other Ferengi in the cargo bay, just being an absolute creep. God, I've got dolphin most of the brain. And okay, so the Ferengi then like falls over and like knocks like this container that like disrupts the floating egg, which then the egg just like goes sideways and disintegrates. And the Ferengi's like, oh, I was just looking for the barber shop. Okay. And Picard then comes in. He's like, what's happening? And then Bram Stoker goes, emergence. And then an absolutely gorgeous woman is revealed. And I was like, oh, she kind of looks like a cross between like Natalie Portman and Gal Gadot, but also Jean Grey. Kind of, because then she turned her face to the side, and then I was like, yeah, it kind of looks like Jean Grey. And then I was like, is that Jean Grey? Is that
So I
what's her
propose
face?
that we call this episode of our podcast X-Men First Class, because that's what this episode is.
Yeah.
I didn't look it up, but once I got like a better look at her face, I was like, that is absolutely got to be Jean Grey.
Jean Grey meeting with Professor X.
That is right. That is. Yeah. This was like trippy on many levels. Holy shit, though. She's so beautiful.
Yeah.
Her look, this dress, A+. I really like this dress. Her whole look was great. Okay. So Picard then immediately feels something looking at her, and it's like, yes, obviously. Her name is Kamala. She is an empath, which I laughed. I don't know. I think because like TikTok, every time someone says they're an empath now, I kind of like, okay.
Yeah.
That's fair.
But
She's a literal psychic empath. Though.
Yeah. She's a metamorph. So she goes up to
I like that she describes herself as a mutant, and I'm like, yeah, you are.
Yeah. So she goes to Picard and she's like, I am for you, Ulrich of Vault. And then he's like, oh, no, that's not me. And she's like, oh, I could feel your authority, so I thought you were the guy. But then she's also looking at Riker. And I'm like, of course she's looking at Riker.
Who wouldn't?
Honestly, yeah. So then they're like, wait, are they fucking using you to like, we're using the Enterprise to fucking traffic this woman? What is happening? And Bram Stoker's like, don't worry, it's cool, it's a gift. And like, that's not better.
Yeah.
And yeah.
No, she's not property. She's a gift. I'm like,
Yeah, it's totally cool.
Yeah, that's not property.
yeah.
And
Property is when you own something and have a possession over it.
yeah. And
We're
so
just
then,
transferring possession of something.
yeah, Kamala's then like, Picard, oh, you're angry. And he's like, yeah, I'm fucking angry. You have fucking rights. And she's like, oh, you're my hero. I'm like, wow. Expectations are low.
Yeah.
Our standards are very low right now.
I'm
Okay.
I'm gonna point this out now and go into more detail about what I think of it later. But I couldn't decide what the trope is for this woman because it's technically Born Sexy Yesterday, but not
Yeah.
because it's more complex than that.
Yeah.
It's more like the virgin horror power fantasy bullshit. I
There's a
really
lot
hate these tropes.
with this. Yeah. So she explains that in history, a woman named Gruth was loved by both the brothers and Krios and Vault. And the war began when Krios kidnapped Groth and took her to their planet. And Kamala is an empath, metamorph like Garuth, and she's the first female to be born in their world for like over 100 years. And she refers to herself as a mutant. And I was like, lol. So she has the ability to sense what potential mate wants, what he needs, what gives him the greatest pleasure, and then will become that for him. And Riker's like, oh, so you mean you can change according to whatever man you're with? And she's like, until I reach the final stage of bonding, when I must imprint upon myself the requirements of one man to serve as his perfect partner in life.
What, like, evolutionary tree led to this?
Yeah, I have, like, a lot of thoughts on many different levels about this whole situation, which I guess I will talk about later. I'll just stick with what happened because they're okay. So yeah, her I did make a note that I was like, I love her gown. It's like this bluish silver. It's the same color of my parents' van that they had when I was in high school.
That's not a positive.
No, it's a nice color. It's the van my mom drove when I was in high school. My brother will get this. Will understand this color reference. Okay, so Riker then escorts her to quarters, and because now that she's fucking awake, they gotta put her somewhere. And like, why was she in stasis? And it's because she is horny and spreading out her horny vibes.
Yeah.
Not on purpose. She just is. And she makes other people very horny for her. And
there's
she's
also
like, maybe
some of it that's on purpose too.
Like
yeah. the pheromones bit isn't on purpose, but like she actively tries to interact with it. Like,
I don't know. Because like, here's the thing. I don't necessarily blame her for really any of this because she doesn't know any, this is just what she's been like taught to do. This is her whole life. This is her whole responsibility. Mm-hmm. So whether or not she tries to or not, like she's like, I don't know. This is all just so utterly fucked. So
she just keeps flirting though, which is frustrating for anyone watching the episode because it's like I said, all she's doing is like filling this power fantasy.
Yeah, here's the thing though. The reason I don't blame her is because she says like whoever she's with, she takes on like what they want. So it's not like she has the control to be like, oh, okay, stop. Nope. Because when she's like alone, it's nothing.
Yeah.
So
but also
she doesn't have
I have one slight problem with her in that she doesn't take no for an answer. It's like, she becomes what they want, but that doesn't mean she has to pursue it.
No.
Yeah. She can be like, look, I gotta shut up because this is bad.
Yeah. This episode has like,
that.
It brings up such weird feelings in me because it's like, yeah, they absolutely like the way that like this woman's situation is like fucking terrible. Like they've raised her to be like to just think of herself as like this present for someone and like to just be like a sex object for people and all that stuff. But also she can't take a fucking hint. Like she's a little bit of a predator in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree.
That's fair. Okay, so she talks with Riker, and she's like, oh, maybe you can sense how horny everyone is for me. And he's like, well, unfortunately, I'm not an empath. And she's like, oh, I think you're more empathic than you admit, at least when it comes to women. And Riker's, I think you have me at a disadvantage.
No, she's right. She's definitely right.
She is right. Yeah. So Riker then gives her some info about like, he brings her to the room, he gives her some info about it, and then he like turns around and walks into her mouth.
Yeah.
I was like, oh boy. And he's like, oh yeah, so like now I get the horny vibe. Yeah. And she's like, okay, well, like, by the way, cool fun fact about me is that like once I get to know what a person likes, I will go to town on it a second time and it will be awesome. Mm-hmm. And he's like, oh, okay. And so then they kiss again, and he manages to pull away, and he's like, listen, I don't open another man's gift, so I'm gonna go.
I know they were intending with that to just kind of like make a joke, but that line has not aged well.
No.
Yeah.
But,
it's
like,
cringe.
In slight fairness, he has done a lot to try to say no.
Yes.
And he's like, maybe she'll understand this as no?
Yeah, that's possible.
Yeah. It's still not great to be like, yeah, don't open another man's gift.
Yeah, the main problem that I have with the line is that it kind of implies like a virginity thing. I don't think that's what they were going for.
To me, it just reinforces the fact that she's not a person.
Well, yes.
She's just continuously another object.
Yeah.
Okay, so then Riker, she's like, it's a really long voyage. And he's like, yeah, that's for sure. Goodbye. And then he's like, okay, I'm going to be in holodeck 4. And I'm like, I don't even want to know what he's about to do.
Yeah.
But also, is he not still on the clock? I'm like, what the fuck?
That cracked me up so hard. Where he's just like, he just had this like intensely horny moment. And he really had to hold himself back. And then he's immediately like I'm going to be in the holodeck.
But, yeah. So, yeah.
It doesn't have as good of a landing as, like, I'll be in my bedroom, but it's very funny.
Yeah. So, okay. So Dr. C and Picard are talking, and Dr. C is like, how can you do this? Just, like, deliver her like this? And Picard's like, oh, listen, arranged marriages have been a thing forever. And, listen, Kamala gets it, and Dr. C is like, nope. She is being conditioned to think this is acceptable to exist only to please men.
Yeah, Dr. C is all of us.
Yeah. And she's like, listen, she was bred by these people to, like, seal a treaty with a seductive coup de grace. And Picard's like, okay, right, fine, good. Let's throw the prime directive to the winds. Let's detain her more against her will. Let's destroy any chance of peace between these worlds. Let's interfere in their society, their customs. And Dr. C's like, that slave trader who calls himself an ambassador, he has her confined to her quarters. She's a virtual prisoner in there. And Picard's like, I didn't know that. And then Dr. C's like, well, it is your ship. Maybe there are a few things you should find out about.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh boy, yeah. So then Picard, in sport mode, goes...
Actually, I wanted to point out that what I really enjoy about that scene in particular is that it's somebody, like, on equal footing with Picard in terms of the way that she's sharing her opinion. Like, normally we see him in a position where it is the captain asking for suggestion. But no, this is a friend saying, look, your moral compass is fucked up here.
Yeah. So, yeah, Picard in sport mode, he goes to see Kamala, and she's like, oh, the ambassador thought she would be a distraction to the crew. And Picard's like, listen, what he thinks of our crew is none of anyone's business. And Kamala's like, you give a shit about me. And he's like, yeah, I give a shit about what happens on my ship. And then she's like, oh,
yeah, I give a shit.
Yeah. She's like, oh, this ship is very important to you, isn't it? And he's like, oh, yes. Oh, yes, it is. And then she says, are all captains' lives so solitary, or just yours? Which, like, wow. Low blow. And then Picard just, like, looks very taken aback, and he's like, don't. And then she goes, what? And then he goes, don't do this thing you do with men. And she's like, this is who I am, Captain. You might as well ask a Vulcan to... she says all this other shit, but then she's like, this is who I am, Captain. You might as well ask a Vulcan to forgo logic, or ask or a Klingon to be non-violent. I was like, oh, wow.
Yeah,
wow, I don't know who
there.
educated her, but that was something.
Yeah, one of the unfortunate things about Star Trek is they kind of endorse this idea of, like, every race has, like, these inherent sort of
stereotypes.
It's their thing, yeah.
Yeah. So Picard says, so then he's like, frankly, it is difficult for many of us to easily accept that a sentient being can live only to be what someone else wants them to be. And she says, but that's what gives a metamorph pleasure. And then he says, but what about your wishes, your needs? And then she says, they are fulfilled by what I give to others. And he says, but what about when there are no others, when you're alone? And then she goes, I'm incomplete. And I was like, oh boy, that's a bummer. And then we do learn, though, that Picard's ideal woman is independent, forceful, brilliant, and adventurous. Great.
Yeah.
Sounds like a cool doctor I know.
Oh, I was going to say
But-
it sounds like a cool swashbuckling archaeologist that we know.
Vosh?
Treasure hunter.
Yeah, it does sound like Vosh. It does sound like Vosh also.
And she kind of looks slightly like Vosh, too.
Oh, who,
Or she-
Jean Grey?
Yeah.
Yeah. I can see that. So Kamala stands up after Picard leaves and then, like, creepy smiles at herself in the mirror. I'm like, it's like, is something shifty going on? Not really, as it turns out, but, like, this felt like I was, like, concerned. I was like, is something nefarious outside of what's actually happening? Like, is she doing some shit? But no, apparently. Okay, so then Bram Stoker so Picard's like, hey, maybe, like, give her some freedom to, like, go out and about, but Bram Stoker's like, hard no. She is too horny to let loose on the ship. Every man on the ship would be fighting over her. And then Picard's like, not every man. And then they're like, hey, Data, want a job?
Yeah.
That was legitimately a great idea.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Data escorts Kamala to 10 forward, and all of the dudes immediately notice her.
All of the stereotype minor dudes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, who are these people? Who are all these randos on this
Oh,
ship?
they're
What are
the
their
miners that
jobs?
they were saving at the beginning.
Oh.
I never
Yeah,
put
I know.
that
They
together.
mentioned at the beginning, and they're just like miners, and that's it.
I remember that, but for whatever reason, that didn't click into me. I was just like, who are these people on this crew?
Well, it's
Who are
because they just
these
said it in
randos?
one line.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I didn't think about that. So Riker then notices him come in. He's sitting with Worf, and then immediately Riker's like, "Sorry, Worf, got to go. I gotta
Yeah.
get the fuck out of this room."
GTG.
Yeah. So then, like, the bros in the room are obviously into her immediately, and they keep trying to, like, send Data away for, like, various reasons, but Data's like, actually, I'll stay. To be fair, though, like, you don't even need to, like, pheromones. Like, this woman is so unbelievably beautiful that, like,
Yeah.
people would look at her either way.
Yeah, I was gonna say they certainly did not make a mistake casting Jean Grey here.
Yeah,
It's
she's
like she
so
was made
beautiful.
to be like unreasonably sexy.
Yeah. Oh, I also wrote in my notes, who are all these hornballs? Well, now I know the answer. Okay, so these guys are trying to get, like, Data to go or whatever, and Worf goes over and he's like, is there a problem here? And Kamala is stunned by Worf, and the Data's trying to pull her away, and she starts to growl, and I was dying. And then Worf starts to growl back with teeth. I was like, that was a perfect interaction.
See, that doesn't make sense because as we learned from Worf in the past, men do not roar, women roar
Well, he
and
he
hurl
growled.
heavy
I-
objects.
She wanted her to throw a chair across the room. I don't know. I thought that was really funny. It was great.
No, me too. I had to quote Worf talking about sex once.
So then Kamala's like, oh, maybe Bram Stoker was right. Maybe I should stay in my quarters. Because she's talking to Picard. And she's like, yeah, but I have one condition. You have to visit. And he's like, oh, that's a very bad idea. You're literally getting married tomorrow. And she's like, bro, I said to visit, not to fuck me.
Yeah.
And then she starts talking about archaeology, and Picard's like, okay, go on. And she keeps going. And then she talks about like Shakespeare and shit. And, like, I can't believe it took that long for Picard to, like, clue in on what was happening. But I feel like it took him too long to put two and two together. And then she says, my empathic powers can only sense a man of deep passion and conviction, so controlled, so disciplined. I'm simply curious to know what lies beneath. And Picard goes, nothing lies beneath. I'm really quite dull. I fall asleep each night with an old book in my hands. And I literally thought she was going to say, hey, how would you like to fall asleep with something else in your hands? She does not. But he's like, oh, I don't think I should visit you. That seems like a bad idea. And she's like, bro, it's just a matter of time. Deep down, you're into this also. And I was like, oh boy. And then I completely, nobody says this, but it just kind of feels implied. So, and then I completely forgot about the Ferengi. But then guess what? They're there. And
That's okay. The episode did too until it needed them to be like a thing again.
Yeah. So like the Ferengi go to they speak to Bram Stoker, and they're like, listen, we will bribe you for Kamala. And Bram Stoker is like, oh, absolutely fucking not. And he tries to leave, and they like overtake him kind of and accidentally push him through a glass table. Okay. So he is.
So they can conveniently knock him out for the rest of the episode.
Yeah. So he is now unconscious, and yeah. So Kamala's like, oh, I have to. They're like, oh, maybe we can delay it, and she's like, oh no, because I'm out of stasis now. Like I need to imprint on Ulrich within 2 days or whatever, because like, that's bad. She needs to like do what she was basically told to do. And Picard's like, yeah, but I don't really know any of this. She's like, you can do this. You can like step in. And he's like, I don't know shit. And she's like, oh, it's cool. I know all the shit about Vault. And so then we cut to Picard playing a huge xylophone or something. I don't know.
I don't know. It's part of the ritual.
Yeah.
That the other guy literally doesn't give a shit about. But, you know, whatever. They got to do it.
Yeah. So when we learned that Picard played the piano, but he like didn't think he was very good, and he also didn't really like performing, which is a shame because like, can you imagine the band him and Riker would make? Him on the piano, Riker on the bone. Live from the Enterprise, it's Picard and Riker. I would have loved
come
that.
on, you need a name for them.
I don't know what they. I don't know. I got to think about that. What their 2-man show would be.
It's obvious. It's called Number One and Number One.
What? I get why Riker number one, but why is he number one?
Because Picard is number one on the ship. Because he's the captain.
No, I know that, but okay. Anyways,
I don't know. Would you prefer number one and his number one?
But Picard,
Does that fit the pun
Picard's
better?
not referred to as number one.
yeah.
No, but he's the number one person on the ship. It's
Yeah.
a joke.
No, I get it. I get that it's a joke. It's just not a very good
Shut
one.
up.
Yeah. So okay, Picard then stands over. I heard he leans over the Torah like he's preparing for his bar mitzvah. It's just like a big ass scroll open on the table. And Kamala's like, oh, what's your damage, Heather? You don't find me attractive or what? And he's like, oh, I find you unavailable. And oh, we learn she plays all the instruments. She's a one-woman orchestra. Like, they're really missing out on a chance to do some kind of crazy band situation, but whatever. That's not
I
the
wonder
point
if she
of this
plays the
episode.
bone.
I mean,
Yeah, probably.
Sex joke.
Okay, so we learned she was taken from her mother at 4 to a royal village to prepare, and she's like always been surrounded by people, blah blah blah, but now like this is the first time she's been alone on this journey, and she keeps trying to ask herself like the questions that Picard did earlier, and she keeps like her every answer though keeps being like, I am for you, Ulrich of Vault. And she's like, I've been preparing her whole life, like she's been preparing for this her whole life to become exactly what someone else wants her to be, but she's met Picard, and their moment then is like interrupted by Riker letting him know that Ulrich is actually aboard. So is it ready to be aboard? So we meet Ulrich in the meeting room, and he is basically Ginger Richard Simmons.
Yeah.
And they're talking about trade agreement shit, which he's much more interested in than Kamala. And he's like, oh, I'm sure she'll be satisfactory. I'm like, oh boy. And he's like, between you and me, yeah, he's more interested in trade agreements. Picard's face just like, his face like changed after Ulrich's like, yeah, I'm really more interested in the trade agreements. And to me, it was a face that said, oh, I'm definitely going to fuck her now.
Yeah.
But So
Honestly,
Picard goes
this makes Ulrich like a bit better in my eyes because he's like,
yeah,
honestly,
he's
I'm not like,
get her over here to fuck her. Like he's not like it's not like gross.
yeah. From the impression I got, because he keeps making fun of like how like sentimental the other guys are, and he's like, oh, they did like this whole like thing with the temple and all that, like
Yeah.
that's really like too much and unnecessary. So it feels like it wasn't their idea to get a metamorph. I mean, he's still kind of shitty for accepting that.
Yeah.
But he's
not
like
he's not gross about it,
yeah,
I guess.
yeah, he's not gross about it.
So okay. So Picard goes to visit her and she's like, well, first impressions, and he's like, I maybe think you shouldn't go through with this. Oh no, he says that later. He's like, listen, don't worry about it. It's fine. And she's like, oh wait, don't go. She's like, I will literally listen to anything you have to say. And she's like, I love the sound of your voice. I'm like, honestly, same.
Yeah.
I get that. And she's like, I don't want to be alone. And to me, every single time someone says that in like anything, that means they're gonna fuck.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just wrote in capital letters, here we go. But then he's like, lights stay on. And she gets him tea. And I was like, oh, okay. And then she's like, you travel a lot. And so am I the most unique person you've come across? Please say yes. And then she like weirdly touches his head. And it's like awkward. And he's like, I don't want to use you as other men do. And she says, but you're not other men, because Picard is not like other boys. But you're not you're not like other men. You would never use me, and that's the very reason I'm with you tonight. And Picard's like, yeah, about that, I should go. And so I thought he like literally just like went to Dr. C, but it's the next morning. So we cut to he's with Dr. C. Yeah, I was like, oh, got excited, and then I was like, oh no, they're just eating breakfast. Mm-hmm. And so then she goes, Penny, and Picard goes, what? And then Dr. C goes, for your thoughts, Penny, for your thoughts. And Picard says, do you have one? And Dr. C goes, I'm sure the replicator will have one on file. And then Picard goes, Beverly, may I take off the uniform for a moment? And she goes, Captain? And then he's like, I need to talk to a friend. And he's like, by the way, this is all your fault for like telling me about shit and having me go look into it more at your suggestion. And he's like, I feel bad because like she's going to go mate with some guy who really doesn't care about her. And she's going to change everything about herself for him. And Dr. C's like, bro, I have no solutions. It's a shitty situation. I don't really know what you want from me. And he's like, I just need a friend. And she's like, yeah, that's fair. So then in his formal wear, he goes to see Kamala, and she is in a white and gold like wedding gown.
Mm-hmm. It's gorgeous, honestly.
She looks incredible. I did get like a tiny laugh though, because like the seam of like this drop waist of the dress goes right across her ass, and that looks really weird.
Yeah.
But the rest of the dress was cool. So she's like, oh, by the way, I totes bonded with you last night. And he's like, wait, what the fuck? And she's like, yeah. He's like, you can't go through with the ceremony. And she's like, would you ask me to stay and keep two armies fighting? Having bonded with you, I've learned the meaning of duty. He'll never know. I'm still an empath. I'll be able to please him. I only hope he likes Shakespeare. I was like, oh my god. That was honestly a twist I did not see coming, that she bonded to like with Picard. Or I guess imprinted, whatever. And so then he walks her down the aisle, gives her away. She looks incredible. This veil, everything. She watches her kiss Picard watches her kiss Ulrich, and then just like looks like he's about to pop every blood vessel in his face. And then we learn, Bram Stoker is awake, and absolutely shook that Picard managed not to fuck Kamala after like spending an extended amount of time with her. So yeah, what the fuck was this episode?
Yeah.
I got to the end of the episode and I wrote down, what is this episode about? What is it trying to say? And I realized, despite having, these very, very weak discussions about like relationships in like a feudalism kind of approach, it has no substantial opinion one way or the other about what to do about it, or whether it's good or bad, really.
Yeah. It feels like they just did this episode so they would prove, look, a really hot woman who was giving off all the vibes wanted to get with Picard, and he was like, I can't.
Mm-hmm.
So
but also they spent
like,
almost
that's so dumb.
like they didn't get to that part of the episode until you're at like 15 minutes from the end. Before that, the two of them don't have much interaction.
Yeah, it's pretty dumb. But okay, here's a question. So they mentioned that they've been preparing her, like she was taken from her mother when she was 4. So they've known that they were going to marry her off, but she's got to be between 20 and 30, my guess.
Yeah.
Yep.
So they've been waiting. How many fucking years? So both sides have been fighting. Meanwhile, they've had this solution. Like they've decided, you know what we're going to do? We know that peace is coming. We're going to keep fighting, but we're going to use this one woman as like our thing to make everything better, to solve this war because of this one woman. So they knew about this for years and years and years, but the fighting just kept going because they had to wait till she was old enough to get married.
Well, that feels so useless. Solution, but they didn't know that the other side would accept that solution at all.
But it's so dumb. Why? If they should have just figured out another fucking way for peace. This just felt like an absolute, like they wasted years upon years putting all their, instead of finding another solution. It feels like the second she was born and they figured out she was a metamorph, they were like, oh, okay, so this is the solution. This is what'll make peace. So like, let's drop everything and focus on her, not knowing
Dory,
whether or not this will work.
It's important to remember that like this is not, you're not getting your information from somebody who's like the major leader of that world. You're getting your information from somebody who is just as like captivated by this kind of solution as anyone could be, and is 100% dedicated to it. He's not necessarily giving anyone like an unbiased explanation of exactly how their socio-political history has gone, because this is the answer that he's dedicated to.
Still, to me this feels so stupid.
Yeah.
I mean, it is stupid, don't get me wrong.
Like this is what they went with.
I'm just saying that his opinion of the fact that this is the only most simple solution, most best, most excellent solution that you could possibly come up with, his opinion is not necessarily the most trustworthy in that regard.
It also doesn't make sense because it also, like, Ulrich doesn't give a shit. He's not interested in her. So like it purely like who just like hire random other people decided this, because it doesn't seem like he was that interested.
Ulrich also mentioned that that species tends to be fairly sentimental about things. So like they're looking at this like that. I mean, keeping in mind their history is literally just the Iliad. So there is that you have to go for here. Like this is not, I don't think this is an episode that they thought very hard about once they came up with what these characters were doing.
Yeah. This episode's stupid. Like,
yeah, it is incredibly stupid. I agree.
Like you said, Jeff, it's like, what is this episode even about?
Yeah, like, what is it trying to say?
This is literally just an episode where things happen. Like, it's not about anything. Stuff just happens.
It's about the fact that this woman is really attractive, and the men who wrote the episode find her very attractive.
Like, because it doesn't change anything for any of, like, the crew. Like, this doesn't change anything for Picard, other than he's like, well, I bet you sat in his room later saying, like, should I have fucked her or what? I don't know.
Guys, I can see the pitch. What if Super Babe?
Yeah.
That's it. That's the pitch. There's nothing more.
That's it. All right. Sounds great. Let's start filming tomorrow.
Pretty much. There was a little bit of a background corner for a moment, though. There was an alternate episode ending written where Kamala did choose to leave.
I mean, good
like
for her.
instead of going through it. They didn't ultimately film it. So, like, that's not the solution they went for in the end. Probably because, as much as I enjoy TNG, it is definitely not a show that likes to shake things up.
No. Oh, that actually reminds me. This is not about this episode, but I do want to kind of retract something I said in one of the previous episodes, which was in the episode The Outcast, where you were talking about how Gene Roddenberry, like, just wanted to have, like, gay stuff, like, subtle in the background, like, just existing.
Mm-hmm.
And how I'm, like, and how, who was it? Was it Brennan Braga who was like, no, we should address this head on?
No, it was Michael Piller who said that, actually.
Michael Piller, yeah.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, you should address it head on like you've addressed everything else. And the more I thought about it, the more I thought, like, I'm actually wrong about this.
Really?
Because when I think about this, like, because we also said in that episode is, like, the progressive heavy lifting was really done in TOS in the original series.
Yeah. Yeah,
and
absolutely.
the strength of the original series was that the progression was not, like, pointed out, was that it was just a natural part of the world.
Yes.
It wasn't, like, a big deal that, like, a Japanese man and a Russian were, like, working together side by side, and, like,
yeah, it was just normal for the world that it took place in. Yeah,
that a black woman was, like, competent and in, like, a respected position, and, like, her race didn't make a difference and stuff like that. So it was like they just made it a natural part of the world.
Yes.
So it could be like there wasn't a debate about whether this was, like, you know, right or wrong, or, like, a debate on an issue or whatever. It's like, no, this is just how the world is. And, like, look how cool the world is. Like, look how cool this world is. Like, it's actually not as, like, whatever you're afraid of is not actually, like, accurate. Like, if the world just looked like this, like, it would be neat, wouldn't it?
There's an infamous moment that happens in, it's either the last or the second to last episode of TOS when, okay, for anybody who hasn't watched Star Trek, original Star Trek especially is really stupid.
Oh, yeah.
So they meet Abraham Lincoln.
Yeah.
As one does.
They meet Abraham Lincoln sitting on his chair floating in space.
What?
Yeah, there's a screenshot of it. It's very amusing. And anyway, so he transports onto the bridge from space, and, you know, he says hello to everyone, and he's greeting them. And he walks up to Uhura, and he says, "What a charming negress."
Ooh,
and it's important to keep in mind that at the time, that would have been not the most controversial thing to say, but it would have irked a lot of people the wrong way.
Yeah, it was, I think it was at this transitionary period where, like, sorry, one sec, where the term, like, Negro at one point was the polite term, and then it, like, you know, it changed into, like, a
pejorative
slur.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So I think when this episode happened, this was kind of at that transition point.
Yeah.
Like, in between, when it was, like, some people, like, were still using it politely, some people were using it derogatorily, and, like, the meaning of it was kind of in this shift.
That's right. However, that isn't why they used the word. They used it because it's Abraham Lincoln, who lived in the 1870s or 1860s. Sorry.
Yeah.
So, like,
and
it made sense.
Abraham Lincoln's era, that definitely would have been a polite term.
That's right. And Uhura's response to it is not to take offense. I can't remember. I think someone else on the bridge is like, "Whoa!" But she says something along the lines of, like, "Oh, I take no offense to that, because, you know, we're above all of that." And I'm just like, you know what? That's good. That's nice. I like that.
Yeah, I think the way the situation goes down is, people are, I don't know if someone says something, but people are, like, visibly shocked, and he's like, "Oh, my apologies. I know some people have used that word, like, you know, badly or whatever."
Yes.
And she's like, "Oh, like, why would I take offense? Like, that's just words." Like, that doesn't thing. That was it's an interesting thing. I get what they were going for, but I think in reality it's kind of a dismissive attitude.
It
because,
is,
like,
but the context of it at the time, I think, was a little bit different because it was a word that was
Yeah.
being taken back by the black community quite a bit. I mean, Martin Luther King uses it in his own speeches.
Yeah,
So like
yeah.
it's the kind of thing where there were people who would use it positively and there were people who would use it negatively, and it's just that as we got further from that era, we got to a point where no, the positive usage isn't really considered correct anymore. There's no reason to separate people like that anymore. We're just people. So I
Yeah.
think the attitude for 1969 when that episode came out, extremely progressive.
Yeah.
Okay, here's the big question. What the fuck is Abraham Lincoln doing in space?
Dude, he's Abraham Lincoln. Why wouldn't he
forget-
be in space?
I forget the reason.
Why would he? What is happening?
It's a really dumb episode. The third season of the original series is kind of infamous for jumping the shark. There's almost no redeemable qualities within that season. They're pretty much all bad episodes. Some of them are considered some of the worst in the series.
Yeah.
A particular episode in question, some aliens bring about like all of these famous characters from different species histories and team the Enterprise up with having to fight them. Basically, it's stupid.
Yeah, it's another one of those, like, powerful alien race makes the crew, like, play in some war
Yeah.
games.
Which is not
Essentially.
even a remotely new thing for Star Trek. It's something that kind of goes back to the first season there. I don't know. It was a
Yeah.
sci-fi trope at the time. They don't do it as much as you get further into Star Trek, but it's definitely like the whole basis around Q, for instance.
Yeah. Like when he brings them to that planet to make them fight, like, the alien Confederate soldiers.
Yeah, that was a choice.
With the green screen, they didn't bother putting
Yep.
anything on.
Anyway, we are way off topic. What we're supposed to
Yeah.
be talking about is this worthless episode.
Yeah.
yeah.
I wrote at the very beginning, it's always bad when your villains cackle evilly, because that's what the Ferengi were doing. But then the episode forgot about their villains, so it didn't matter anymore. They just kind
Yeah.
of weren't there anymore. That's it.
I also, okay, how did Dr. C know that, like, Kamala was, like, being shut in her room, not being able to leave, but Picard didn't know this?
Because somebody had to tell her.
Oh, probably because, like, Dr. C bothered to ask questions. like
Yeah, Picard was trying to keep his distance from the
Yeah.
whole situation.
because it's like Dr. C's definitely the person who, like, she's aware of the situation, so she would be going around asking, like, hey, what's up? Like, is she free to move around? Like, is she trapped in there? Like, all that kind of stuff. So I totally believe that, like, Dr. C was probably asking around.
Yeah, I mean,
Yep, I could see
believe
that.
Is there anything else we want to talk about before we move on?
I don't think so. I kind of do want to move on. Like, what was the value in this episode? The end. And I don't mean the end was the value. The end was just as valueless as the rest of it. But why? Why was this made? What did this do? What purpose did this serve?
Yeah, it was dumb. I did not care for this episode. Man, I hope we get a good one coming up because, like, those last two have been, like, bummers.
So, like,
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. We got two crappy ones in a row.
so like the thought that was going on in my head over and over again in this episode is, like, can't everybody just leave each other alone? Because it's like, first of all, they make this woman a sex slave, basically. And then also this woman is, like, very predatory. So it's like, can't everyone just keep their hands to themselves, please?
Yes, please.
All right. I guess time for favorite moments and lines.
Uh,
My favorite moment was that the episode ended.
I Oh, I like when she was like, oh, I want, when Kamala says to Picard, she's like, oh, I want to know, like, oh, your passion and conviction, you're so controlled, disciplined. I want to know what's lies underneath. And he's like, nothing lies beneath. I'm really quite dull. I fall asleep each night with a book in my hands.
Yeah.
I liked, I liked that Dr. C gave a shit.
Mm-hmm.
I liked that Picard and Dr. C were having breakfast together. That was cute.
Yeah.
I thought Jean Grey looked amazing.
Yeah.
Both her dresses were fantastic, especially the dress she wears for most of the episode. That was a great dress. I'm just looking through my notes. Yeah, no, that's it. I don't have a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't have a lot either. There was like a couple like kind of funny moments, like, you know, I'm really quite dull, that sort of thing.
Her interaction with Worf.
Yeah.
I thought that was funny.
Yeah, same here. I thought that was really funny. I liked that more good guy Riker, like, besides his like kind of questionable line about not opening another man's gift, but like, you know, doing very well to not give in and to be respectful and all that stuff.
Man, the bar is low. We're like,
Yeah.
good job, Riker, for not fucking this lady.
Yeah. And I gotta be a little objectifying here for just a split second. Anytime we got a little bit of Jean Grey's side boob was fantastic.
Oh man, I was definitely trying not to look, even though it's a TV show from 30 years ago. But I was definitely trying not to look. But every time that, you know, there's just an interesting shot, I'm like,
An interesting shot.
Yeah, she's just so hot. Like, and it's not shot egregiously either. It's just like,
that's true. Yeah,
they don't focus on any of it.
The script may be around.
Yeah.
The script may be focused around objectifying her, but the directing is not.
Yeah. It's like you get little glimpses here and there, and it's nice. It's nice to look at. And
it's nice, you know?
Also, okay, the terribleness of this episode kind of overshadows this, but I think Jean Grey, she did a really good job at, like, what she was supposed to do. Like, in terms of, like, you could see the character, like, seamlessly change their attitude and stuff to be more attractive to, like, whatever man they're interacting with. Like, she did a really good job at that, and, like, just her acting in general was really good.
It's like I said, she was made for this role. She did fantastically.
Yeah, this script was just very questionable.
I
yes.
would have loved to have seen like their reunion when they filmed X-Men, because X-Men would have only been like a few years later, because the first one was in the late 90s, wasn't it?
It was 2000, yeah. So they would have filmed it in
okay.
like 98, 99.
So that would have been kind of like a fun little reunion of like,
Yeah.
oh, hey. Because, yeah, they had like so many scenes together.
Oh, hey, didn't notice you there.
Yeah. Although it makes it awkward because Jean Grey is kind of like Professor X's like daughter, essentially.
Well, he didn't fuck her in this episode.
Yeah.
So I guess that it all worked out.
Well, they leave.
Didn't he?
We don't know.
They leave that ambiguous.
Yeah, they do leave it ambiguous. All right, Jeff, do you have any favorite stuff?
Riker saying that if you need him, he'll be in holodeck 4. I was just
Yeah, that was
thank
great.
thank you, Riker, for that. Because not only does that introduce that, well, not introduce, but confirm that Riker is a complete horn dog over this, but also it confirms that the holodeck is for porn.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's our first official confirmation that is exactly what is going on there, because he walks out from being seduced and says, all right, I got to take a breather by going to jerk off on the holodeck, basically.
Yeah.
Unless there's some other implication as to what he'd be doing there. I don't know what, but...
Yeah, it's probably that.
Yeah, I think so too.
All right. Time to move on. Now it is time for predictions for the next episode. So the next episode is called Imaginary Friend.
Well, okay.
And your little tidbit is that a child's imaginary friend is not all they seem to be.
Oh no, a child.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is actually a really impressive child.
Oh, so not Alexander?
I can't tell you who it is. Just that the acting that the kids do in this episode, because there are children in the episode, is not bad.
Oh, is it those kids from the science fair? Oh, they were the best. Even the
one who
sociopath.
grew radishes, but they came up all weird.
Yeah, and even the sociopath. There was Marissa, radishes, and the sociopath.
Yeah. The one who was like, we're all gonna die.
Yeah. Okay, well, obviously, this imaginary friend is not imaginary. It's gotta be fucking real. Mm-hmm. Oh, okay, I have an idea, though. Okay. So this kid maybe, like, has the imaginary friend, and then they, for whatever reason, all of a sudden, like, something happens and they can't see their imaginary friend anymore, but maybe their siblings try to, like, make it real to, like, comfort their, like, the sibling who had something, like, traumatic happen. So, yeah, they make up the imaginary friend. They try to bring it to life in some way, like whether it's like 3 kids in a trench coat situation or like holodeck style or something. Yes. Is that enough?
Yeah, sure.
That's enough.
Sure, we can call that enough. All right. Well, if you'd like to see if Dory's correct, watch along with us and join us for the next episode of Fully Functional, a TNG podcast.
Goodbye.